Oh, that's why you needed it right away.
Baby, that we go away. Uh-oh. Oh.
You're gonna be on.
I'll say sex is much more interesting than cheese.
Well, I never heard that one. I heard apple. Right.
Smith.
Oh, you're a natural. Here we go.
Laura Gail's still eating peanuts.
No, not me.
Okay.
I just asked the dog. I said,
I hear
"Dog, you don't
peanuts, I automatically think Laura Gail.
Not this time.
She's full of peanuts.
Let's hear the story of your mother. What do you know about your mother?
Do you have 5 years? What do I know about my? What would
Tell
you
me
like
what you.
would you like to know about?
Say what's nice.
Well, no.
Yes.
You remember when you were a little girl? What she did? What she was like? Where you lived?
Oh my goodness, yes, there was always a better apartment down the block and a better house around the corner.
And
Always.
And how about the fact that her mother died when she was very little, and she was raised by her grandmother?
And she was,
16 when she became deaf from the flu.
no, she
14.
did not become deaf at 16. She had the flu. And she gradually became deaf. Daddy took her to musical plays in New York City. And she heard the loud parts of it. And she said the last thing she heard was when I was an infant.
Are you alright?
She had me up against her head. And she heard me cry, and then it just gradually faded away into nothing. And that was the last thing she heard. So that was
That I didn't know either.
1927. And it was 1920 that she got sick. No, 1918. 1918. Well, yeah, she was 14.
Oh,
And
I had
That's
16.
what caused it. I mean, started
Yeah,
it.
well, she got the mastoid,
Right.
and they didn't take people to doctors in those
Right, they
days.
didn't take proper
But
care
when
of her.
baby Frank got sick, then they went to the doctor. And as long as they were going to take baby Frank to the doctor, they took Eileen too. And the doctor said it was too late to help her
Daddy.
because the eardrums were punctured and it was too late.
She had a rough childhood.
So Uncle Frank ended up deaf in one ear, but the other ear was okay.
So what was your mom's? What was her full name?
Eileen May Patterson,
And what was your father's name?
William John Smith.
William John Smith. So what did he do for a living?
Worked for the Youngest Electric Light and Power Company.
Something like 18 years.
Oh, at least.
Long
Yeah.
time.
He had his own department. Once upon a time, when you bought a toaster or a mixer, the electric company also fixed them for you. Because you bought them from the electric company.
I didn't know that either.
Oh yeah, and they would come to the house, and that was his department, was the repairs. Well then when the Depression hit, they did away with that department. You know, consolidation and cutback and everything. And because they liked him, and because he had a good work record, they kept him on, but as a meter reader. So he walked around reading the meters. And unbeknownst to Mother, he was paying the electric bills of the people who couldn't pay their electric bills.
Yeah, girl.
Because they had babies or children and he could not turn it off.
Yeah, I remember.
So Mother got pregnant with Laura, but that wasn't too bad because they had a little bit of a cushion in the bank, and that would help. And Daddy knew there was no cushion in the bank. And when Mother found out there was no cushion in the bank, you can remember Mother well enough.
You know where my
And
bubble
Daddy
is.
had a nervous breakdown.
Uncle Joel probably does. See if he's in his room. He'll tell you.
In his mind, the only reason a man did not take care of his family was if he were too ill to take care of his family, his New England conscience. So therefore, he became ill so that he did not have to try to get out of it. he had his nervous breakdown.
Is that what the psychiatrist
Hey,
said?
hey, hey,
He
Daddy.
genuinely felt pain. He was too ill to take
Not
care of his
waking up.
family.
Mommy will be back in a minute.
And
She
that's
probably
what
has
happened.
them. So
And
he
when
had,
he came out of the hospital, the doctor said, quiet, get him out of the city, out of the stress, out of the tension. And Mother knew about Shenango because Uncle Ken had worked
Is that
for
why I
Hessel.
moved there?
Yeah, well, Uncle Ken had worked for Hessel.
Well, I learned a lot today here.
Okay, let's go back. My grandmother died.
what year?
I was
Before I was born.
1937. My grandmother died.
What did she do? Do you know what she did?
She cleaned other people's houses.
She has
And
my
she was
mother.
a mathematical genius, that woman. But in those days, there was no such a thing as, anyway. So she died, and before that, Cousin Trudy had taken me to meet this nice man who was her grandfather. So when I came home, I got to thinking, if this man is Trudy's grandfather, and I knew it was not Aunt Margaret's father, because she was from Hungary, right? Or Slovakia.
Czechoslovakia.
So therefore, it had to be Uncle Harry's father. Uncle Harry was Daddy's brother. How come this man wasn't my grandfather? So I asked my mother. Nonsense. It's not your grandfather. I said, but, and that's as far, no, I don't want to hear any more. She turned her back. She didn't want to hear any more about it. So after Grandma died, this real nice looking man all of a sudden became my grandfather, and he moved in with us.
So Grandma actually lived with us?
Oh yeah, Grandma died with us.
I didn't know
She
that. I
died
just knew she died before I was born.
Mother's Day, 1937.
Year before I was born.
The ambulance came and took her away on a Saturday afternoon, because we were out, all those kids were gathered around. And the next morning, Sunday morning, Mother's Day, Daddy came home and told us that she had died in the hospital. And anyway, this nice man moved in with us, and they bought a car, because this man could drive, this grandfather who appeared out of nowhere, because Grandma Kelly had spent all her life looking for him, because she was still married to him. Anytime I said, I'm going over to Aunt Margaret, she would say, she's not your Aunt Margaret. But Grandma, Uncle Harry is Daddy's brother. He is not his brother. So I would go to Daddy and say, how come Grandma says these things? And Daddy would say, when you're older, my child. And then after Grandma died, all of a sudden, family falls into place all over the place. So I remember one day, Grandma went to church. She had long hair, way down to here. She used to take it like these, and do something up here, and then put these big pins in it. Put her little derby hat on, and off she'd go to church every single Sunday to Mass. Well, this nice man, this Trudy's grandfather, came to visit. Do you remember what 6 Hawthorne Avenue looked like? You had the driveway that went to the back door, and the front door was on the sidewalk at the top of the steps. Okay. So this nice man came to visit, and Mother is a nervous wreck. She's walking around the house looking out the windows instead of talking to this man. And finally this man says, well, I really must go. And he goes out the front door, and as he went out the front door, Grandma Kelly came in the back door. If he had been 10 seconds earlier, they'd have met on the sidewalk. If he'd been later, they'd have met in the living room. The woman that she had spent 50 years looking for came that close to meeting.
But she wasn't with us long.
No, she was with us only a year. She used to live down on Post
Was
Street,
she
and we
sick
went to
already
visit her.
when she came?
Oh yeah, that's why she came.
Okay.
My dad said she cannot live alone. She has to come to us. So she did. And she used to send me to the store. And they had Phillips condensed soups and Campbell's condensed soups, okay? Campbell's you bought on the corner, just down the street on the corner. Phillips you had to go all the way up to Getty Square to get. I had to go to Getty Square because Phillips were a penny cheaper.
Oh my.
And she promised me money. She'd promised me a penny or two to go to the store for her. Never give it to me.
Yeah.
And when I'd say, Grandma, you promised, she'd say, shame on you. when you're older, you're going to regret pestering a poor old lady like that.
Oh, she was a sweetheart, wasn't
She
she?
patched her patches. Honest to
Oh,
God.
God.
Her sheets had patches on the patches. Her clothes.
But was it because she had to? I'm sure
She was saving for her old age.
Oh, okay. How
And
old
that's
was she
how we
when
got
she
the
died,
house.
do you suppose?
74.
Oh, well, all right.
And we got the house on Ryder Avenue with her money and the car.
What city was that?
Yonkers. But anyway, so they went to Canada. That's how I got sidetracked.
Who went to
did?
Canada?
Mother and Daddy went to Canada.
For what?
I believe that's where you were conceived.
Oh,
on that trip.
vacation. huh?
Away for Canada.
Grandpa bought the car.
Before she left, she
Yeah,
was so
with the
pretty.
picture hat and that brown dress with the big orange flowers on
I
it,
was never
with the little
believed she could be
cape,
that pretty.
like the chiffon. Wasn't it gorgeous?
Beautiful.
They went to Canada, and they stopped off in Shenango because that's where Uncle Ken was, working as a hired hand for Charlie and Hessel. So when Daddy had the nervous breakdown and came back, and the doctor said, peace and quiet, he can't take the city stress anymore. The only place Mother could think of peace and quiet, and God knows there was peace and quiet.
Sure was in Shenango.
All she knew was Shenango, and there was a house for sale down the road from Hessel.
Favorite memory of my childhood is Shenango.
Completely.
Yeah.
Oh, ours. It's always it's home to
I
all
had a
us
good
girls.
childhood.
It's really.
Good childhood.
And I was very young when we left.
And anyway, the house was for sale for $2,000, completely furnished, $1,000 without anything in it. And it took Mother so long to make up her mind to pack up 4 children and a father-in-law. You
And
know,
what
to
did you know
make
about
the,
running a chicken farm?
to make the move. That the furniture was sold in the meantime, so we got an empty house. Now we came up.
Oh,
Bev went up
why
with
not
Grandma.
sell the furniture in Ryder Avenue?
Well, it was, no, but I mean the house itself was empty. I'm sure there were priceless antiques.
Oh, I
Because
see.
we found a spinning wheel up in the attic of that place. But anyway, Bev was already up there with Grandpa before we moved.
You were
Oh, yeah.
in
She-
Shenango with Grandpa?
Oh yeah, she was Grandpa's
We
darling.
drove up, I think, the weekend before, 10 days before,
Yeah.
something like
And
that.
I went
We
with,
went to Aunt Cora's.
and Aunt Cora's, Mildred drove up.
Mildred.
I drove her absolutely mad. When are we gonna get there?
Yeah.
Are we almost? She could be very cross.
Yes.
Now,
She
I
had
must
no
have been
children.
driving her crazy, but I never forgot it because she was so angry with me. You know, she'd had it, and her voice was so sharp, and she hurt my feelings
You
so
know how long-
badly. I must have been driving the lady nuts.
But do you know
but
how
I
long
never
it took
forgot
us?
it because it really hurt
Do you know
me.
how long it took to go
How
from
she-
Bronxville to Shenango?
A long time.
10 hours.
You get
On
stuck
a
on
2-lane
17
road.
behind
Up
somebody.
and down the
right.
hills on 41 through Afton
Yeah,
and
and as a
Green.
kid, I'd had
So,
it. and I
anyway,
must have driven her nuts.
We got to Shenango, and it was dark, and we pulled in, and of course, where do little girls have to go? Right, Laura? Where do they have to go first thing?
Why little girls? Little boys don't beat you.
No, but what I'm just saying is, so we said to Grandpa, Grandpa, we have to go to the bathroom, and Grandpa started to laugh.
The
And
outhouse.
he reached over on the sink, and he got a kerosene lantern, and he said, here, he says, go out the back door. What? Grandpa, we said bathroom. He says, I know. He says, out the back door. So we went through the woodshed, out the back door, to the outhouse, and we loved it. It was a 2-holer. Remember?
Speak for yourself.
No, Jerry. We thought you don't have to stand outside and pound on the door. 2 people can go at the same time.
Two-bowler and was it winter? What time of year did we go?
No,
up
it was
there?
April.
Oh,
Yeah,
April, but I
was
bet it was
10
still
feet of
cold.
snow on the
I
ground.
know. No, not 10 feet,
Yes, they had
sweetheart.
a blizzard. It was really
It wasn't 10 feet.
10-foot.
Drifts, maybe.
Yes.
Yes.
It was
Well, Shenango
cold.
always had
Oh,
10
we
foot
loved the outhouse.
We did
What kind
because
of
2 of us could go
memories.
at the same time.
What year was this?
Wee.
I never saw it.
1941.
I sure didn't love that.
I was 10 years old, and I hated that
1940. Sorry, 1940.
I was 9
Okay,
years
so I
old.
was born.
Oh yeah, you
Oh, I
were
was 2
born.
when
You
we
were
went
2.
up there, right.
Yeah, 1940.
And you were also Grandpa's little darling.
I know.
Oh, he just loved you.
I adored
Because
Fran
him.
and I were the brats.
I adored him.
It was the day after.
And you were the one, Uncle Ken
Everybody
loved
loved.
you. You were
Everybody
so well
loved Beverly.
Beverly got the fishing
Isn't
rod.
it a shame Francis
Beverly-
can't be
but you
more
had
like
the
Beverly?
patience
Lost in
to
Beverly
sit
fishing,
there
too.
and do it, you see. Now I know why they took you. You would, Fran and I probably would have been bedeviling and nervous or whatever. You would sit quietly and do it, but why do they always prefer Beverly? Because she was so well behaved. Beverly was the favorite of
Yes,
the
she was.
company.
She was the favorite of the family.
Yeah.
So go
And the
over
school teachers,
when each of you were born. You were born what year?
27.
And then came,
Bev in 29.
and then,
31.
Can I speak for myself?
38.
and were there stories to go along with each one? I mean, she was fed with a dropper. Is that what you said?
Eyedropper.
What was the story there?
She couldn't retain food. She vomited. I bet she was allergic to milk, which they didn't know at the
In
time.
those
Yeah,
days.
I bet she was too.
And she didn't
Both the
keep
Melanie's
anything down.
boys
She
were.
kept throwing it up and was losing weight. And the doctor said there was nothing he could do, that my mother was going to lose her. And my mother said, no, I'm not. And she fed her with an eyedropper every 15, 20 minutes. She put another eyedropper full of milk into the baby. Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, I was her ears. I had to tell her when you cried. I had to tell her whatever happened.
I remember she tells that she used to sleep all night with her
Yeah.
hand
She
out.
did till the day she
Yeah.
died, with her hand off the bed, because she put the crib next to the bed. When the baby cries, they kick, and the crib would vibrate. It would wake her up.
And how old were you guys when your father died?
Oh,
When he died,
many
Joseph was
years
6 years
later.
and 6 days old.
Keith was just born, so it was 1953. Keith was-
47,
He
and
died.
6 is 53.
Keith was 6 weeks old. I was nursing him, and with all the hubbub of the funeral and the going, I lost my milk. And
August-
that's why I
August
remember so
12th.
well when he died.
August
Yeah, he
12th.
died
Okay.
when Woody was overseas. Woody never made it.
Joseph was 6 years and 6 days old. I remember that. And I can't tell you the date Mother died. I just know it was July of
Oh, I
1970.
I
did
used to know.
Grandpa
It was the
died-
year Sissy
I
graduated.
was in school when he died, 'cause they.
Grandpa
Grandpa
died
died
on
on Hawthorne
Hawthorne
Avenue.
Avenue,
Yeah,
136
yeah. I was
Hawthorne
15.
Avenue. When
that
I
was
was
46.
I graduated in
Were you still
44.
upstate?
No, it was Jerry. It was the winter of
Living with the Murrays? I
45,
thought I was
sweetheart.
No, I was 15 when you got Matt 16.
I graduated in 44.
I was
Okay.
8.
We moved to
So you would've
136
been
Hawthorne
15.
Avenue. He died the following January because I had to quit my job and go back to taking care of my mother's house again.
So it was 45.
45.
Yeah,
Okay,
I was,
by 19.
okay, 7 then. I thought I was 8 when he died.
It was,
Whatever.
Like that time.
So you were still at home.
Yeah, I was just little. That was one of the most devastating points of my life.
Really, and I
Why is
felt
that?
When
he was
Grandpa
so
died.
Oh,
favored.
because you
I
were his
cried
sweetheart.
my eyes out.
Stayed there.
you were his
weeks.
sweetheart. I was his thorn in the flesh and you were his sweetheart.
I adored him.
So what's the story with the Murrays?
We were just talking about that when, is it because Mother wanted you to finish school
Wanted her to
up there?
finish her
She
schooling up
wanted me
there.
to finish school because I had a very good chance of winning the Cornell State
Scholarship.
Scholarship from high school, and I would have gotten it, except that at the last year I got too homesick. And
You also got asthma, honey.
well, I had that from the time I was 10.
Sure.
Yeah, but not as bad.
We used to have to go to
Not
the
as
Not as bad.
rider,
It got
to the
to the point where you
doctor for
frightened
you.
Hessel.
Yeah.
You had
I
such a
used
hard
to sit
time
up all
breathing.
night in the rocking chair
Yeah,
by the
and you
fire.
frightened Hessel to the point where she realized that you had to go home.
And when we left Shenango, I would have given anything if the Murrays had chosen me. Again, I can see why they didn't. I wasn't as nice a child.
Well, who were the
Well
Murrays? How did
behaved.
they get in the picture?
Oh,
That's what
in
Uncle Ken
Shenango,
worked for.
they were my mother and father and grandfather's very good friends. Very, very good friends and neighbors. And we interacted with each other. They
They're
were
the
very
ones-
good to
yeah.
us kids.
So you'd go over there and do whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you
I
ended
was-
up moving in with them?
so
Yeah,
that she could
my mother
continue
moved back to
school.
the city. I stayed up there. with
As in
them.
New York City?
Yeah, because
Yeah.
that's where we worked,
Yeah,
Western
first-
Electric.
Yeah, but we
Mother
moved to
and I.
Yonkers.
Yeah, 'cause
Yeah,
I
we
went
lived in
to
Yonkers, but we worked in New York City.
And how old were
I used to
you?
go back up there for summers.
I was 17, you were 15 and a half.
Probably,
Almost
probably 16.
So you just wanted to stay in the same school?
Yeah.
So
just
for
I
that
could-
scholarship.
For the scholarship.
And which you didn't use anyway?
Well, she didn't win
I
it.
never finished up school up there, or would have had it.
She was too homesick, as she said.
Also,
Which I don't blame you. None of your family is there. You could come back and let Fran
Fran was too busy playing mother and standing in line line with the ration coupons to get Mother's red meat for her.
Well, that covers quite a few years.
You go to the butcher shop at 7 in the morning. They didn't open until 9:30, but you had to be there at 7. And here I am, 17 years old, 5 foot tall, in with these Amazon women crowding and pushing and shoving and everything else to get in there to get whatever meat was in the store at the time. But Mother had, remember, she had to have her so many grams of this and so many grams of
Yeah, why do
that.
you say it that way? She had to have it.
That when she wanted it, she had to have it.
Okay.
There were times when she substituted.
So anyway, who got married first?
I did. I had all my children before my sisters even started.
Really? And then who was next?
Bev.
Yeah, I was 20. I was 23.
What year did you get married?
52.
Tell Rock about the
same year I
telegram.
got married.
I got married in July 1852.
And I got married
Sissy
May
was-
11th, 1952. I didn't know we were the same year.
And Sissy was born in
Oh.
October of 52.
So you actually got married second. You got married in
Right.
May. and I
May
got-
11th, I was the second one to, but
Yeah.
2 months later, Mom got married.
And we got the telegram.
Yeah.
And being
Oh,
married.
yes, I remember that. I was living in
And being
Freeville
married
at the time.
Wednesday. Love, Bev.
Didn't you wear a lovely suit?
No, I said we'll write later.
Yeah, we'll write later. Love,
Didn't you
Bev.
wear a lovely suit for that wedding?
Yeah, I couldn't
Yeah.
get white at that time of the year.
I have a picture of her
In
somewhere.
July,
Yeah.
I got a pretty pale yellow.
You sent us some nice
Yeah,
pictures
yeah,
of
and the
that
minister
wedding.
says you may kiss the bride, and I have a picture of Bev, her feet are that far off the floor. Woody picked her up to kiss the bride, and you can see daylight between her shoes and the floor. But Mother and I went crazy trying to, because Freeville, where do you send a telegram in Freeville? You had to go to the railroad station. And we got this telegram of being married, we'll write later, love Bev.
I still have the telegram she sent me back.
So
Really?
she and I sat down at the kitchen table and composed a telegram to Bev.
What did it say?
That was funny.
Who, what,
Where?
where, black, white, red, short, tall, medium, a series,
20, 40, or 60.
yeah,
Yeah.
20, 40, or 60.
Well, you silly people.
Well, this,
Well, what was she, we couldn't go to the wedding. What difference
Doesn't
did
make
it
any
make
difference.
who
She
she was
could've-
marrying?
well, we,
You could have written a letter, couldn't you?
well, she could have at least said, I am marrying Shirley Woodrum, or I
We would
am,
have said, who's she?
oh,
Then we would have really been
I'm glad
alarmed.
Woody's not here.
but
Oh,
we had to
dear.
get the railroad agent out of his house to go over to the railroad station to send the telegram.
No, we just had a few weeks. And
We tried to
knew
call you, you
that
know.
Oh, was he
was
gonna-
shipping
oh.
overseas.
Number
I
one,
see.
we tried to call you, and the operator wouldn't take the call, the Freeville operator. Remember her?
Why wouldn't
Oh,
she
yes.
take the call?
Because she was off duty.
Oh, all right.
She said, is this an emergency? And I said, well, not really.
Those were the
Then I'm
days.
sorry, I'm off duty, and hung up on us.
So you can see I wasn't living up there then. I don't know all these ins and
So,
outs. How long did you and Woody date before you up and got married? Like about?
I think we've been going together. It's hard to remember exactly now, but
Not
a
exactly.
month, 2 at the most.
Yeah, she never mentioned him.
Beverly
She never
Smith
mentioned she was
Woodrum.
interested in anybody. Then all of a sudden you get a
That
telegram, I'm
fast.
getting married.
Well, we didn't plan on getting married right away. We were talking about getting married, but we never planned on right away. You know, we had said it maybe in the next year sometime.
Before you got news that he was being shipped out?
Then we found out he was being shipped overseas for a year and a half.
So she said, wait a
we
minute, I want to send
decided
a
to get
telegram to my mother. Then we can get married.
And then you were out of the service and came home and lived downstairs in the apartment while he was gone, didn't you, in Freeville?
Yeah, I got out of service on grounds of
Right, I
marriage.
forgot
Oh,
about
yeah,
that
she worked in
period.
Ithaca.
On
remember?
grounds of marriage.
Yeah.
For any of us, it should have been on grounds of insanity.
Really?
For getting
I forgot
married.
about that.
Well, what'd you do? You tried to finish high school with the Murrays, gave up on that, and joined the service?
No, I finished
Yeah, she
high
finished
school,
high school.
and then I worked at Metropolitan Life Insurance Company for
And then she met
3
Peggy.
years.
For how long?
3.5 years, I think.
And what happened to that?
And then I got joined the service.
Why?
Well, I'd never been out of the state. I guess I was at a place in my job where it wasn't going anywhere. And I just wanted to do something different, I guess. And at that time it was the Korean War was going on, wasn't it? The Korean?
1950 was the Korean War.
Well,
Yeah, it was.
yeah.
Time frame.
Because Ronnie
Yeah,
was a
because
baby.
I got out of school 47, so we got
While we lived in Mulford Gardens, Ronnie was a baby.
Yeah, so it's kind of a multitude of things, and I tried to get into the Marines. They wouldn't take me. That's
What was the problem?
Too
It
short.
was too short. They couldn't fit me with uniforms and clothes anymore.
So you joined the Air Force and got into.
Well, I tried then to get into the Navy, and they wouldn't take me. So then I said, well, I'll just try the Air Force. And it was a struggle. They finally put me through on a waiver.
They
Because of your
stretched-
height?
That you promised to grow?
No, they stretched her all the way up to 4'11", but because of her science and math marks.
I had good grades in school.
So,
Anyway, I went into the Air Force, but then
where'd you go in the Air Force? I mean, where'd they train you at and all that?
Someplace Mississippi.
I started out in Texas in basic, where you wash the pots and pans and drill and get up all hours in the morning.
In a pair of boots,
I
what
mean,
size
you-
did
you
you
took-
tell?
I thought that was
camp.
Mississippi where you,
No.
no, it was Texas, huh? Where it was so hot
San Antonio.
and muggy.
Oh, it was
They
decent.
couldn't
Yeah,
find a
you
pair of
said
shoes
that.
to fit her.
No, I had to wear brogans that were half size too large. Maybe a whole size, I don't know.
You're probably used to that though.
But then I went to Mississippi.
Oh.
I trained in electronics.
And how long were you in the service before you got out?
2.5 years.
And where during that did you meet Dad?
Maybe a year and a half. Because he was overseas for about a year before I could get out.
So when he came back, you guys got out and ended up in Kansas or something, or?
Well, I got out. He was still in service, but he was he was stationed in Colorado.
Yeah. That's
And
where
he
you
was
went.
going to school. No, I was thinking of that. When we met, he was in school in Colorado, and I was in school in Colorado. No, I was in school in Colorado. From Mississippi, I went to Colorado to camera school. And then I got transferred to an instrument shop where I worked on these little voltmeters. And I did some typing and kind of a smattering of things.
And where did you meet?
And we met in the instrument shop. Yeah.
So anyway, you got married and he went overseas and came back, and then where did you go to? You bought a house in Colorado, didn't you?
No, we didn't buy it for a while until Vicky was born. We
Columbus.
went to Ohio, Columbus, Ohio.
Oh my, I didn't remember that.
Yeah,
She's been in the capitals of the states. I remember.
yeah, Vicky was born in Columbus, Ohio. And then we moved to Denver, and we bought a house, a little house out there. And we were there just about a year, just had it fixed just like we wanted it. Had a little, at that time they had this fiberglass awnings that were really pretty on the front porch. And we put that on, and we had fixed up the yard nice and put in patio, and it was nice. And we put the patio in out by the garage. And then he got shipped out when I was pregnant with Rob.
You got pregnant with me in Colorado.
Uh-huh.
You chose to have me in Kansas.
I didn't choose.
I gotta go through life saying I was born in Kansas when I could say I was born.
When you're saying shipped out, you don't mean overseas.
Woody
Shipped
was shipped
So
to
how-
another station, to Colorado, and it was the last thing that I wanted.
You mean
I mean to Kansas.
to Kansas? Okay, it
That was
wasn't
the last
overseas.
place I wanted to go. I didn't want to leave my new house for one thing. I was very content first to have my own place for the first time. And the benefits out there, I could have had the baby in a big military hospital. instead of in barracks type thing like I had Vicky, where you wait on yourself and know where to go. First day you had a baby, you're up around feeding it.
Back in those days, unbelievable. You want a sip of water, sweetheart, with all your talking?
And then when I heard we were moving to Kansas, I thought, oh no, here we go back to the barracks type thing again. And it was real hot. And we moved in the summer. And all we could find was this great big house that was about 30 feet back from the street. And we lived up on the second floor. One thing I was safe for was they had high ceilings. But the laundry facilities were down in the basement.
Oh my Lord.
And carrying the groceries from the street up to the house, up to the second story.
And Vicky was how old?
Just a baby. She was 2 when he was born.
Yeah. So you had to carry the baby up and down too.
It was terrible. It was so hot. So hot. And then we finally found a little house on College Avenue. And we lived there for the rest of that summer. And then I think in the fall, when after he had been born, so he was born in January, so it was the next spring. We moved into base quarters, brand new. They were duplexes. And we had air conditioning throughout, central air. And it was real nice. We liked that. We were there 5 years.
5 years in one place?
Yeah, in Kansas.
Gee, I don't either.
And we thought, well, altogether it was 5 years. And Vicky was going to start school there. Her birthday fell like in December. But their rules were such that she could start kindergarten when she was 5. I thought, oh boy, that's nice, instead of making her wait an extra year. But don't you know, they shipped us out of there. And so she had to wait another year to start school, but we moved from there to New York, upstate New York to...
Rome? No.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I visited you in Rome.
Yeah.
And at that point, you were living where?
Oh,
We were living in...
probably White Plains.
I don't know, you moved up to Loris,
Yeah, but not when you were in Rome, because I think Jurgen and I both came
yeah, you were there.
up to Rome.
No, you were there.
I was in Virgil when I went to Rome.
You were in Virgil when I went to Rome.
I was in Virgil in 1961.
You,
You were in Little York.
really?
Part of the time she was in Virgil.
Part of the time.
Yeah, you were in Little York part of the time. Where did you go from Rome?
Well, Woody went overseas.
Is that when you went to Little York from
He
Rome?
went to the South Pacific and...
It was South Pacific in like 65,
Yeah, and that was the year we moved to
Indiana.
the lake there.
To the lake, that was 63.
Mm-hmm. No, we moved in 63. Well, that was when he went overseas, so he went in 63. He was only gone a year.
Did you spend a whole year at Little York?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a delightful
That was a-
year.
That was
Well, so much for that.
It really was.
Yeah,
We
nice
enjoyed
neighbors,
it.
nice little cabin.
Yeah,
That
a
was
place
nice
to go
because we all were
swimming and the kids could
pretty
go
close.
fishing.
And you got together with your 2 sisters.
Yeah, it was really nice.
So what happened to you out of high school? I mean, what did you do? You went to high school, you got out, you got married, what did you do?
No, I went to high school and decided I wanted to be a teacher, so I went to college for a year.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I went back the second year, they had raised all the prices, and I hadn't saved enough money from being a waitress. So I took a year off to make money, and that's when I met Uncle Jurgen.
Where'd you go to college?
And I got married. Cortland, SUNY Cortland.
Cortland, New York?
Yeah, they specialize in phys ed, but I wanted to be an elementary teacher.
Southern University of New York in Cortland.
State University of New York,
State
Cortland.
Largest
It's well known
campus
for
in the
phys
world.
ed, which I wasn't interested
State
in.
University of New York.
And where did,
Anyway, that year, I took off and saved some money, and I met Uncle Jurgen, and
what was he doing? Was he cooking then? Or?
he was baking in his father's diner when we first got married. He was a very good baker.
And what year did you get married?
1952, the same year,
Same
2
year.
months before Mom got married. And then I proceeded to have oceans of children.
All right, let's go over to you. What happened to you? You got married, had your kids, lived happily ever after?
Oh, definitely.
Cinderella.
For 45 years that's all I have done, is live happily ever after. No, I graduated from high school, went to work. My grandfather died. I had to stay home, take care of the children. Frank came home from the service. We got married. My mother moved in with Uncle Pat. So we moved into public housing.
Uncle Pat is...
My mother's brother, Austin Howard Patterson, was my mother's brother. And he was living in a furnished room and sick to death of it. He wanted somebody to come home to keep house, do laundry, and be there. My mother needed somebody to go to work so she could spend time with Laura. And it just worked out.
What year was that?
No, it was
Joseph was
supposed to
2
work
years
out.
old.
It
Joseph
didn't
was
work
2
out.
years old, 1949.
And
Yeah, it
what
was supposed
city
to work
was
out.
this?
Well, they went to Freeville.
Freeville.
Yeah, and my mother bought the house, and Uncle Pat supported it.
Mm-hmm.
Freeville is not terribly far from Little York, so
No.
it's upstate
It's just
New
a
York.
little village. And then Ronnie was born, and it cost us $38 a week to live, and Uncle Frank was making $35 a week. And we just decided that we wanted better for the children. I was tired of sidewalks and jungle gyms on concrete. And so we came up to Freeville. Frank got a job in the salt plant.
Where Uncle Pat worked.
Well, yeah, and that was it. And Sherilyn was born in Cortland.
And when did you move to Watkins Glen?
When salt plant transferred him, Joseph was in the 8th grade.
While we were living in Groton.
So Joseph
I mean, the other side of
was
Groton.
13 years old. It would be 1960. We moved to,
Valois first.
yeah, the
Yeah.
salt plant transferred him, and we moved over there. And then we had the house built in Irelandville, and we've been there
Watkins
since 62, like the winter of 62.
Didn't that house burn down once?
The house that was on the lot burned down.
Oh, okay.
Right
We
when
had
they were
getting
in the
ready-
middle of...
I had 2 weeks
Buying
to
it.
find some place to put 3 children, a husband, and 7 rooms full of furniture. Because our house was sold, and people were moving in 2 weeks. And the lawyer called me in the morning and said, "Remember that house you were buying in Irelandville?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, it burned up last night."
Did they ever figure out why?
Oh yeah, we know why.
Why?
Because the chimney, the furnace pipe that went from the furnace to the chimney was that far from the beam overhead. And because the house had been empty for so long, everything was so dry, etc. And Sears Roebuck was coming in to put a new kitchen in for us. So we took the wainscoting off the wall, and while we were working, getting ready for Sears to come, we were burning the wainscoting in the furnace to keep warm. Now we put the fire out in the furnace and didn't notice that the pipe itself was hot, and it set fire to the beam. So we admitted liability, but Allstate wouldn't pay. So
So what did you do? You just built another one?
we had another one built on the lot for us.
Had you had your closing yet?
No. Well, the property, you mean for the Irelandville place?
Yeah.
I think so.
Okay, because you would not have been responsible if the closing had not taken place yet.
So
Boy, that was a bummer.
it was meant to be, because when we tore the rest of that house down, we would have frozen to death. We found the inside, no insulation whatsoever, and some of the outside walls were boxwood from Sampson Air Force Base, World War II. That's what the walls were.
Really?
We would have frozen to death in that house. So it just wasn't meant to be.
So what
Got a
did you
brand
do?
new house out of it.
What did I do? What did I do? I don't even remember. It was so long ago. Oh, let's see. I got out of high school, so went to work as a secretary in Ithaca. Got married.
What year did you get married?
56. Had had Randy in 57. Melanie in 60, Mark in 62. We bought a house in Groton when Randy was little. No, before Randy was born. And we fixed that up. We sold it. We bought a house in Virgil. And then we sold that, and then we moved to Groton. We've been there 22 years.
With your horses.
We brought one little Shetland pony with us when we came.
This is the horsewoman in the family.
And that was the start of the whole menagerie. Her name was Midget, and we just lost her a couple years ago.
Really? How old
She
was
was
she?
30 or 32.
Unbelievable.
And that was the one time Ronnie could not handle it. He called the vet, called the guy with the backhoe, and he asked him if he could please, and he asked Carlene to, if they could just do it, bury her, and then he came back home. He couldn't handle it. He loved that pony.
Where'd you bury it at?
All our horses and our pony, anything that we've lost, and our dogs are buried out in the pasture.
Really? So you have a place and all
It's
that?
our cemetery.
Pet Cemetery by Stephen
Mhm.
King.
Yeah, let's hope not.
I didn't see that.
Gee, you know, doesn't sound very eventful. Yet look at all the things we've really been through.
So what year did your mom die?
70.
And she got married again when, though? She married Frank.
She's been married. Only 3 years?
She's only married about 3 years.
Yeah, I've seen it like a couple of years, but I was thinking maybe 6 or 6. I don't know, right around there.
3.5 years, I think we said.
Yeah,
He gave her 3, because everybody said, don't marry the man, you're going to end up an old man's nursemaid, etc. Because, again, he was also, it's strange. Dad was 17 years older than Mother.
I thought he was 16 years older.
No.
Because Grandpa Frank was 16 years older, too. And I remember
Yeah, 16, sorry.
saying she married 2 men that were 16 years older than she was.
Grandpa
Outlived them
Smith
both.
was 16 when my father was born. Grandma Kelly
Whoa.
Grandma Kelly was 22.
Whoa.
But Grandpa Smith, don't forget, had been on his own since he was 8 years old. Had been working since he was 8 years
I don't
old.
know anything about
He
his
got-
background.
Oh, okay.
You forgot.
He was the son of a Methodist minister
Why was he on his own?
because he had 3 years of, or gone through 3rd grade of schooling. He was 8 years old. He was a good strapping boy. He didn't need any more education.
Now, who are we talking about here?
Grandpa Smith, my father's
Boy,
father.
this was back in the
Your
dark
father's
ages.
father was the son of a Methodist minister.
Mm-hmm.
And where did he live?
All through New England. My grandfather said when he was a boy, he remembers looking out his bedroom window and seeing the old man of the mountains in New Hampshire, at one place where his father was. But anyway, Grandpa Smith was on his own from the time he was 8 years old.
How do you mean own? How did he live?
I don't mean he lived at home, but he was supporting. He brought money home. He brought
Okay,
money
just-
home.
Wow.
Well, in those days they did.
Dark Ages, all right.
And,
What year do you think that was?
all right, just a minute, and I'll tell
1870
you.
or something?
Wait a minute. I'll tell you. My dad was born in 1887. Grandpa was 17 years old when he was born, so Grandpa was born in 1870.
Yeah.
Okay?
So it was 1878 when he was
Yeah,
on his
when
own.
he was started out on his own. And Grandma Kelly had been jilted.
What does that mean?
It means the man she thought she was going to marry married somebody else.
And who's Grandma Kelly?
Was my father's mother. So she swore she'd marry the first man that came along. And Grandpa happened to be the first man who came along. And at 16, he already was a man. So she went to his mother, the minister's wife, and said, I am pregnant by your son. And when she said something to her son, he admitted that he had been with her. Had, what is it they say in the Bible? Had known her in the biblical sense, okay? So therefore, they had to get married. Well, he knew, or he was almost sure, she was not pregnant. And she wasn't.
What a little devil.
Oh, yeah. But 3 months later, she got pregnant, because when Grandpa was 17, Daddy was born. Dad was 17 years older because
I thought he was
Grandpa-
16 years old.
Grandpa
That's
was
what I've
70.
always heard.
Or 16 or 17.
Dad was born in
Wow.
1887. Mother was born in 1904. That's 17 years. Because I used to tease Mother. I used to say,
Okay, but her birthday
Grandpa-
was January. His
Yeah,
was like
he was
October,
October,
so it was
yeah.
like 16 years and 3 months.
so I said, Grandpa was 17 when Daddy was born. Daddy was 17 when you were born. Now let's see, I'm 17 now.
Who was 17?
And she said, Francis, I don't want to hear that. I don't want to
When I
hear you
was
talk
born?
like that.
Oh, you were.
Yeah, I was saying now I'm 17, you know. So I don't want to hear that. Don't even think such
No,
things.
you were only
you know.
11 when I was born.
Yeah, I was 11 and a half. Or
So who was
February
17
to
when?
Grandpa was 17 when Daddy was born. Daddy was 17 when Mother was born.
Oh, and Mother.
And then Grandpa Frank was also older than Mother. But she had a good 3.5 years. She did. He was a sweetheart.
Grandpa Frank?
Yeah.
He could also be a bit of a pain.
Well, sure, at that age. They both could. They were both used to independence. And
Well, he had gotten roped into marriage, and I'm sure that didn't approve his.
oh, anyway,
No,
Grandpa
we're
Smith.
talking about Grandpa Frank's couple.
Um,
Oh,
Harry Silas, Grandpa Smith, okay, married Grandma Kelly. And now this is a quote from Grandpa Smith. Before we were married, she couldn't get enough. After we were married, every time I hung my pants on the bedpost, she screamed bloody murder. Now that's a quote from Grandpa Smith. Because I always remembered it, because I didn't know what he meant by hanging his pants on the bedpost. I couldn't figure out why she would scream just because he hung his pants up on the bedpost. Anyway, she threw a carving knife at him. She was pregnant at the time. They had a fight. She had a terrible temper. She threw a carving knife at
This
him.
is your grandmother?
Mm-hmm.
Your
Grandma
mom's
Kelly.
mother.
No, father's mother.
Your father's
My
mother.
mother's mother died when she was only
4.
4 years old. She died of typhoid in New Orleans, drinking cistern water. Anyhow, so let's see now.
Somebody had a temper.
She threw the carving knife at Grandpa. Grandpa said if she hadn't been pregnant, he'd have killed her. So he walked
This
out.
is lovely stuff.
He walked out. Well, this was Grandpa talking as I was a child, you know. He walked out. They had her committed because in those days, you know, because of her temper, etc. Then she got back out and no, she already had the baby before she was committed because Grandpa's mother, feeling guilty because she had forced the marriage and the fact that Grandma had not been pregnant at the time, she had forced the marriage, took Daddy to live with her. He was raised by his grandmother. And she babied him to make up for the fact that she had caused this problem, she thought. So Grandma Kelly was in an institution. Daddy was being raised by Grandpa's mother, and Grandpa was in New York City, shacking up with Feeney and having 4 more boys.
Could you say he was living with, and it's not Feeney, what was her name?
Adolphine.
Adolphine. Be
He called
nice
her
about
Feeney.
this.
He called her Feeney.
It's my family you're talking about.
Honey, he called her Feeney.
They had 4 more boys. They were never married.
Well, they couldn't marry because he was already married. And Grandma Kelly would never give him a divorce.
She wouldn't divorce him, Grandma
So
Kelly.
those 4 boys were not.
Uncle Milton was illegitimate.
Oh, yes, and Uncle Harry and Uncle
Oh,
Alfred
these
and Uncle
gentlemen,
Franklin.
they did so well in the business
Well, I guess
world.
they did.
And
My
then
word.
when Feeney died, Grandpa took in Betty somebody. I have no idea what her last name was. She was just Betty. And he took her in to help him with the boys. And she was so, what shall I say, conflict. That's all there was. So, one by one, the boys moved out. And then Betty died. And then Grandpa came to live with us because my dad said, my brothers have had my father all their lives. Now it's my turn. So Grandpa moved in with us. This Trudy's grandfather moved in with us and became our grandfather.
They never really hit it off either.
Hmm?
They really never hit it off either.
Who's Daddy and Grandpa? Oh, they were 2 completely
I
different
don't
people.
remember that.
So where's the
There was-
I just remember they were the 2
I
favorite
don't
people
want
in
it
my
on
life.
videotape.
what's the heritage? I mean, somebody came from Scotland, England, Ireland. Is that what you say?
My mother's family goes back to the very early, not the Mayflower, but directly thereafter, maybe the boat that followed the Mayflower. I mean, New England. They were Very Ann and Thorne
What does that
all
mean?
through. That was their names. Very Ann and Thorne, all the way through the early times. My mother got back as far as the Revolutionary War. She found a member, I think it was a Very Ann, listed in some regiment from New York in the Revolutionary War, because I remember her telling me that.
Huh.
So she got, because she was saying she could join the Daughters of the American Revolution. She was eligible because she
and
had
she grew
traced
up
it.
in a house where you were taught manners, where there was, well, I assume, was it only Aunt Cora, where it was the linen, the nice china,
Oh, yes.
the
I was
beautiful
raised-
table manners, and, you know, that art of gracious living is something I was always glad I had.
This is your mother?
Oh,
My
yeah.
mother
Where'd
grew
she
up
grow
with
up
her
at?
grandmother in Bronxville.
Bronxville, New York.
They had some money or something and lived well?
No.
No,
it's
I
just
don't
they-
think they
they
had
just
much
lived
money.
well.
It was just the way that you would live. That was the way to do things. And it was just the art of gracious living, good table manners. Just
Mother
a
did.
good
Remember the
background.
tables
Mother
set
set
for
a
company?
beautiful
I
table for
ironed those
company.
linen tablecloths and
And
linen
Mother taught
napkins.
us good manners, and
Oh.
that is very important. Rosalie, in her family, the parents, well, Andrew was drunk half the time. The mother was from Russia. And they didn't know from good table manners, or linen, or napkins, or a butter plate. They wouldn't know. And she is so grateful that she used to eat at our house different times to learn how you could have the niceties.
I was in
Now
Mother-
she sets a nicer table than I do herself, because she's got the crystal and the spoke china and all
Mother
that.
had more
which
silverware
I
and
don't,
dishes for each person than we had.
Remember when company was, and
The
never mind, the
girls
girls
will do
will do the dishes, remember?
But you
And
know
we
something?
knew the
This-
3 forks, the butter plate, the,
This
everything.
Thanksgiving was my 50th Thanksgiving dinner that I had. And I found myself resenting the fact that my grandchildren were down in the basement playing shuffleboard and air hockey. And I was in the kitchen doing the dishes. Because I remembered, all I could think of was, oh, don't bother, the girls would do. Why don't my daughter-in-law say things like that? Do you think I would have let my mother work in the kitchen like that with my children playing? No, we never would have done that. Would you? If your mother had cooked a Thanksgiving dinner and could spend all day and everything and put a meal on for 26 people, and then went out and started working in the kitchen while your children, grown teenagers, went down cellar to play games.
Oh, you've got a good point.
But this year it annoyed me. It doesn't usually bother me because Alice and I and Connie and so forth are busy working. Now Chris and Jeannie were helping me. But the 16, 17-year-olds were down in the cellar playing. And that just...
And remember, us 3, you were too young, Laura. Remember Sheningo? You had to wash. We would dry, however it would work. The Methodist hymnal on the kitchen table. And we would sing the hymns. And we would harmonize.
Yes.
What's the song you
loved
always
it.
harmonize to that I love so
Blessed
much?
be the tie that binds.
Yes, and you would do the
Yeah, that was, at the time we didn't enjoy doing the dishes, but it's a very fond memory of mine. And we'd try a game of Monopoly or playing a card game, and that little piddly sister would come and be in our hair.
I don't
and,
remember
Mom, Mom, she's spoiling the game. Mom.
Don't
No,
touch.
I
You
remember
were
that.
the
You're not old
toddler,
enough
you
to
were,
play.
oh, come on, get this kid. Of course, I probably resented her.
Do you remember the time
being
we were
7
playing
years,
kickball in the
the-
dining room and we kicked it through the window?
We dared
You don't
play
remember that?
kickball
Mother
in
and
the dining room?
Mother and Grandpa went to Cortland. Okay, like they usually did for
I would
shopping.
never do
Okay,
You
no,
mean
no.
Beverly
The
was
stove.
too?
No. By the kitchen door was home plate. The stove was first base. Between the 2 windows on the driveway side was second base. And remember the door that went to the side yard in that big dining room?
Yes.
That was third base, okay? And we had the ball, and we were supposed to kick it gently. And I don't remember which one of us kicked it. I truly don't. But whatever happened, it went right straight through the window on the road side, okay? And all I could think was, me being the oldest, I was the one that was going to get killed. It was an automatic thing, right? So I pulled the shade down and I taped around it, thinking, well, Grandpa will never notice the broken window, right? Because the shade is down. Well, the wind came up. And Mother and Grandpa come home, and here's this shade going, you know. And got it, because I was the oldest, I should have known better, I shouldn't have allowed it, etc., etc., you know. But I can still remember taping it. That's why when my children do things, I have a little more patience with them, you know.
But do you know, with that farm, I can remember how Mother fixed that dining room, the big dining room, and then how she did the sofas like facing each other in the living room.
And
it
the
was
dining
blue
room
and white chintz. Wherever we moved, she always fixed.
Do
you know-
Yes, she really did.
you know
All
how
the
The only thing I
time she
remember
had
about that
to
house
do
is
it.
my crib up in the hop.
Yes,
Yes,
with the
by
little
the pipe.
window
Right,
on
the
the
pipe.
floor.
I remember that, and I was only 5 when we moved from there.
And do you remember playing with my Shirley Temple doll?
No, I just remember
I
hearing
came
about
home
it.
from a date one night, and you had,
Do you remember when I used to get in the pig pen
Susie
with the
Q.
pigs?
yes,
Archibald
Archibald Oscar.
Why
I
would you
remember
do
that.
Archibald Oscar.
I
Why
used
would you
to
do
get,
that?
I don't know, I guess
Because
I
she
liked them
just-
when I was
they
about
were
3 or 4 years old.
Pets, they were little, you know.
Archibald
got
Oscar and
Susie
Susie
Q.
Q.
Yeah.
And one day I let them out.
Did you?
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
those mangy
And we came,
critters.
you don't remember getting off the
That's-
school bus?
yeah.
And Mother in her nightgown, her long nightgown, because she had been sleeping, working at Corona all night. Mother, Grandpa, and Daddy, and the pig doing circles around
Trying to
the
get it
house
back in the
until
van.
finally it dawned on one of them to stop and catch the pig the next time.
I'm sure I didn't do it on purpose because I never would
Daddy
have done
finally,
anything like
Daddy
that.
finally,
Oh, of course
no,
not,
but
Laura.
Daddy, well, see, remember the trough
But I
that you
used to like
opened?
those
Yes.
pigs.
Well, when the pigs were little, the whole pig fit through that trough. See, when they got older, just their head would fit through. And Laura lifted that up to get in with the pig, and of course the pig come out. And we got off the bus, and here's these 3 adults chasing a pig in circles till finally Daddy stopped. And as the pig came, he caught him between his legs.
And
Yeah.
it was Daddy who named them.
No, I named Archibald Oscar.
Oh, okay. Well, then he wasn't very clever to come up with Susie Q. But, yeah, the
Okay.
farm is good memories.
Oh, yeah, we
Very
had a
good.
good time. The best time of our lives was
Except we
there.
didn't like the candle eggs too much.
The
That was
what, dear?
candling eggs.
Candling?
I didn't can sandpaper them. I had a dress that had a hole in it. That was my.
Oh, oh,
And
oh.
held them up to the
You put them on
light
the
Oh.
or put
to
them on
see
a
if they would
scale.
fertilize,
Yeah.
and then you had to weigh them. And
I got
get
so
them
I
ready for
knew
shipment.
medium from large without even using
More,
the
the
scale.
2
But
things that I
yes.
resented was doing that damn garden, although we had such a huge garden,
yeah,
Mother
I
had to,
remember hearing
because we
about
had to
that.
weed it all
That's
the time.
right.
And the other thing was
Mowing the
canning
yard.
endlessly. Remember how much work it was to do peas,
course.
carrots,
They had to
tomatoes,
boil for
corn,
3 hours.
everything. And oh, we was shucking those peas and cutting those, oh, and the kitchen all steaming. To this day, Beverly, I would almost go without food than I would can 1 jar of food. I hated it that much
Oh, I
as a
still
kid, every year.
You know,
I will not
but
can.
now there's no problem because those days you had to have a wood fire going for 3 hours. To keep it boiling for 3 hours, you had to have a wood fire going. And in August, that's no fun to have a wood fire going so that you can
So what do you have to have
water
now?
baths. Now you have a gas stove.
Oh, which is
And now you freeze.
also makes the
Anything
kitchen
that
pretty
takes
hot.
3 hours,
Yeah.
you freeze.
Otherwise, the farm was great. Oh,
yeah, we had such
the
a good time.
pastures and the picnics and the kick the can down the street.
Filling
And
the
jumping
old
off the
barns.
rafters in the barn into the soft hay,
Yeah.
going over with the milk bucket and coming
Getting
back.
out there at 10 o'clock at night when there's a real hard crust on the snow.
And her face cut. We were just mentioning that, how you got your face cut to
Oh, well,
ribbon.
that was coming down Burt Boyle Hill.
Yeah, and Mother went down to school and asked the school teacher for your part in the play and practiced with you at home and taught it to you at home so that you could still be the princess in the play.
Yeah, I remember that very well. Man, did I cut up my face on that hard
Yeah,
crust.
you did. And I remember taking you home and you, of course, till you got the blood washed off, you looked positively, I mean, you know, terrible because you were just bleeding.
Yeah, I remember
Taking
that
you
very
in the
well.
house.
And that part in the play, too. And so I'm now 59. It's only 4 years ago that I joined a little theater group, and I actually performed on the stage. But I had we had to rehearse for 6 weeks. I was in Poughkeepsie 4 nights a week, and you had to learn the whole part. Okay, I did that, met nice people. But I never knew I'd have such stage fright.
Really?
That 2 hours before I went on was agony. I was scared out of my wits. And because of that, I decided I'll do a little work behind the scenes, but I will never get on. It's just not worth it. Get on the stage. The stage fright was so bad, and I'm usually pretty voluble and good with. I was so well, you know, your first time on stage. Am I going to forget the lines? But I always said I've done the PTA, I've done the politics. I was pretty active in
remember how Laura
church.
embarrassed
Now I've
you?
done my little theater group. I don't
church?
know what's left now to do.
What
You
did
remember
I
how
do?
Laura embarrassed you in Chenango in the church?
Shenango, she
You
must
know
have
that
been
the
so
church
young.
is for sale?
Isn't? She was,
That's sad.
or let's say she was
In my
3,
listings.
maybe 4 years old, and she had a part in the Sunday school. You know how they get up and they da 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 da. You know,
Don't say it. My grandchildren do it now.
we had practiced her and practiced her and practiced her till she knew her lines right down the line, and she was saying them just as good as gold all the way to the church. And we were sitting in the front row, and she got up there and she froze and couldn't remember. And Bev is prompting her, and she's not responding. She's just da. So she runs down from, remember the front of the church?
Yeah.
She runs down, you know, and Bev pushes her away because she's mad because she's been teaching her all these things. You know, she makes her go off to the side. Well, then she was the Virgin Mary. You don't remember? She was the Virgin Mary, and she goes up to the front of the church as the Virgin and Joseph, right, and the baby, and they're telling the Christmas story. When from the pew comes this little 4-year-old and runs up and hugs the Virgin Mary and says, I'm sorry, I love you, I'm sorry. And this one is, get away, you know, I mean, right at the moment she's the Virgin. And she blushed, and she was so embarrassed. And of course, everybody in the church just loved it. But you don't remember her coming up.
Amy, Scott wants some? I remember you guys putting my hair in ringlets and saying, now go outside, but don't get dirty. Don't get messed up. I'm like, oh.